Am I the only one who didn't know that before Netanyahu and his minions, Palestinian women were central to the household economy in first century Palestine? In fact, even back then, their textile work and food production not only provided wealth to their families, but they also gave these women a source of economic independence and social status. Now, this is because textiles at the time were very valuable family assets. And women's clothing was more than fashion, it was a form of social and financial security. And so the sewing of dresses, like traditional dresses like the thobe, was a skill passed down for generations, with each village having its own unique sewing style, like the ones you see here. Now, during the Ottoman era, records from cities like Nablus and Jerusalem show that women continued their legacy of securing their financial assets by regularly appearing in courts to claim inheritance, property rights, or dowry rights, sometimes even challenging their local customs or their male relatives. And it wasn't just Muslim women who went to these courts, by the way. Jewish women used to go to these courts when they weren't able to initiate divorce under Jewish law, so they'd get around that by going to these Islamic courts under the Ottoman rule. Now, nobody talks about this, but women in Palestine have been fighting for their land. Even during the late Ottoman period, appearing in public protests like the 1884 demonstrations against land sales in Afula. And these women were also very important in finding and preserving Palestinian artifacts. Hundreds of Palestinian women worked on archaeological digs, contributing to the interpretation of ancient finds. In fact, organizations like the Palestinian Exploration Fund relied on many Palestinian women, like laborers Huda and Rizq, who were Palestinian women documented by Lebanese-American Frederick Bliss for their excavations at sites like Tel el-Hassi, though they weren't paid equally or as much as their male counterparts, unfortunately. But directors of these initiatives did report that still many Palestinian women applied for these jobs. Now, as urban families began to prioritize education, Palestinian women began to leave these physically intensive labor jobs to emerge as writers or journalists or even politicians, contributing to debates and discussions on feminism, nationalism, and social reform. In fact, the first Women's Congress in 1929 was a government establishment that brought together women all over Palestine to demand national rights and gender equality. Women like Matil Mahanam and Hind Husseini became prominent activists and writers, documenting women's roles in the national movement. And this isn't very surprising, considering that women in Palestine have always been very active in the legal sector, many times even representing themselves in court, even as they were the plaintiff. Can you imagine being a Palestinian woman at that time representing yourself in court? Yes, you are the plaintiff and the lawyer. Now, as Palestinian women were getting more and more informed on politics and law, they were getting increasingly empowered to continue on this path after the Nakba of 1948 happened, which displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. And women became pillars of survival and resistance. For example, Nariman Khorshid, who was a member of a group called the Chrysanthemum in Jaffa, provided medical aid, smuggled and even fought on the front lines. And she later became the first Palestinian woman to fly a plane post-Nakba, breaking crazy gender barriers in the face of a terrible tragedy. And to this day, Palestinian women are breaking new ground in every field, often against incredible odds. For example, women in Palestine make up half the university students, or more than half of the university students, making them amongst the highest rates of female students in university in the Arab world. And despite Palestinian women making up only 19% of the labor force there, these women are starting businesses at record rates, with 14.5% of them turning into entrepreneurs. Now, you probably already know who Bisan from Gaza is. She's a Palestinian woman who has been documenting the ongoing and she's reached millions of people effectively doing so, despite the incredibly dangerous and impossible circumstances that she's under. But a lot of people don't know that Palestinian women have been using digital platforms to launch startups and push for initiatives to advocate for social change. For example, there's Dr. Isla Jad, who is a pioneer in gender studies, and Randa Siniora, who's a leading human rights activist, both of whom are shaping academic policies and debates on women's rights and social justice. And then you have Palestinian women like Hanan Ashrawi, Noura Erakat, and Dalal Maghrabi, who have inspired generations through their activism, law, and diplomacy. And these aren't rare cases. There are full-on organizations like El Tulufa that are training a new generation of women leaders, many of whom are now graduates of university and community organizers. Now, hot take, but considering all the things that Palestinian women have had to endure, I would say that their achievements are all the more impressive and remarkable, which is why I feel so compelled to share their stories, and I would really appreciate it if you you would share them to. Thank you so much for watching. My makeup is complete. You can find all the products I use in my shop, my link below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And as always, all sources in the comments.